All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning. This is our Fair Funding Statewide Press Conference. What makes it statewide? The PLUS organizations, the Pennsylvania League of Urban Superintendents, which is a caucus of PASA, which is the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators, the superintendents group, professional organization. PLUS has come together to have five mostly simultaneous this morning, press conferences across the state. Here, representing Allentown, Bethlehem, and our neighbors in Easton, Lancaster, Johnstown, and Upper Darby. So we have kind of across the state. The school districts, the 29 school districts that make up the PLUS caucus, educate 300,000 students across the state. So we're talking urban districts that educate 300 students across the state, 300,000. And in that 300,000, the PLUS districts educate the majority of students of color across the state. So we are a focused group on urban education and the needs regarding funding of urban schools. I think we'll see a common theme this morning, that we have seen more from the state in funding in the last couple of years, and we're grateful for that, but we're not there yet. And we'll hear that from our speakers. We'll also hear, I think, a common theme that we have to do something with charter reform. And let's do the easy stuff. Maybe not easy politically, but it should be, because it's low-hanging fruit. So our agenda here, I want to introduce, in a moment I'll introduce and call up Dr. Carol Birks, my newest superintendent friend, superintendent of the Allentown School District. Then we'll have Where is the Fight for Fair Funding? Dr. Karen Beck-Pooley, board member from the Bethlehem Area School District, who is very active at the state level in fair funding. We'll have remarks then from Ms. Audrey Matheson, board president of the Allentown School District. Then we will welcome Ms. Esther Lee, president of the Bethlehem chapter of the NAACP, to talk from kind of the grassroots level, why funding is important. And I'll mention that Mrs. Lee served on the Bethlehem Area School District Board 1972 to 1971 to 1975. Seven. Okay, so
6 years in those days.
So 6. Oh, really? 6-year
Yes.
terms back there. Back then. So Mrs. Lee has been, an iconic figure in the district and has those years of experience to speak from about what she sees as the needs. And then we're going to invite Sean Veneman, a 9th grader at Freedom High School, to say a few words from the students' perspective. And then I'll make a few closing remarks, and we'll be happy to answer questions from the media and from audience members. So I want to also recognize from my district, we have Dr. Kim Shively, school board member, Dr. Dean Donaher, school board member, Mr. Mike Raschuti, school board member, and Miss Emily Schenkel. How many is that? I think we have a quorum, so don't talk to each other. Okay? No discussion allowed today. With that, let me invite Dr. Birks to the podium, and I'm going to get ourselves set up here computer-wise. And then, are you going to have someone do the slides, Doctor?
Yes, we have a lot of friends in the room.
Okay. So. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
You
Roy.
are welcome.
Let's give a round of applause for Dr. Roy. My newfound friend. When I first came to Allentown as interim, he was the first person to write to me and offer some support, so I appreciate you. And 37 years of service and commitment to children. Let's give him a round of applause for that. Some people can't do things for 37 minutes. He spent 37 years fighting for public education, so I thank you. First, I want to say good morning to everyone here today. To our school board of directors here, I acknowledge that my president is here, Ms. Matheson. Our vice president is here from Allentown, Ms. Wilt. We also have Ms. Brown-Noel, who's also a board member here, so I want to thank you. I also want to honor our school board of directors here from Bethlehem. We are a family in this work in supporting children. I want to thank all our families who are here this morning, as well as the members of my superintendent's Student Advisory Council, and our board members who are also students. I want to thank them as well for being here with us. And everyone in the room here, thank you, all the educators, especially to our elected officials or the representatives who are here. And also to, we have Dr. Silva is here, so he's going to take on the reins. So I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to building a close relationship with you as well. So thank you this morning. I'm honored to join this morning along with other members of the Pennsylvania League of Urban Schools, plus caucus, which, as Dr. Ray mentioned, is an affiliate of the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators. This is a very important event across the state today because we're standing in solidarity to support urban students throughout the Commonwealth. As Dr. Roy mentioned, many of those students are students of color, students who have lived in poverty, who have had not the best experiences. So today we are all over, could you imagine what's going on here? All across the state, people are saying, let's fight for fair funding for all the children who may not have had not receiving the opportunities that they should have. Just think about this. 1 in every 7 of Pennsylvania K-12 public school children attend urban schools across the Pennsylvania Commonwealth. And when we think of it, oftentimes you think, well, they're large cities, but there are urban areas within which I'm learning, which aren't large cities, who are that are urban areas. As a state, our future prosperity depends on us successfully preparing our students who are talented, who are creative, who are gifted. It's our responsibility to ensure that they are prepared for college, career, and life beyond high school. So it's our collective responsibility, everyone in the room, including the press that's here today. Additionally, there's a tale of two Pennsylvanias. There's a sharp contrast between the haves and the have-nots. Just 3 minutes away from a city like Allentown, students live in great wealth. And then you cross the border, students in Allentown, some of them live in great poverty. How are they going to catch up? How are they going to be able to have what they need if we do not fund schools equitably so that they can have equal access and equal opportunity and equitable, because we use the word equal, I want equitable opportunity for all of our students. Just think about this. If you look at this facility, and I'm just going to bring it down. That's okay if I'm bring it down. You think of this facility and look at some of the facilities in some of the urban districts, and particularly in Allentown. It's a beautiful facility. And so we need the funding in order to ensure that students all across the Commonwealth, particularly in the urban centers, can learn and thrive in conditions that make them feel good about their schools and their experiences. Having the adequate curriculum, resources, and that their parents feel safe in creating those conditions that students have what they need. In some of our wealthiest districts, $4,800 additional dollars are spent on public education compared to what the urban schools are able to receive. Just think about that. I want you to really think about that. $4,800 additional dollars are spent on public education in other communities and not necessarily in urban districts. Historically, Pennsylvania's urban schools have been underfunded and have relied on property taxes to fund our schools. Because of inequitable state funding, communities like Allentown don't have the access to the same resources that our suburban counterparts have. What I learned, and everyone knows I'm originally from Connecticut, but I'm a Pennsylvanian now. So when I learned that Pennsylvania ranks 44th in the nation, now how many states do we have? Think about that. 44th in the nation for the state's share of funding for K-12 education. I was shocked. I was saddened. This state has the largest gap in the nation when it comes to the financial difference between the richest and poorest students. This is my appeal today. to all elected officials, to all the people with the old money. I asked them, like, who has the old money? Everyone here, that we have to do better for our children. It is imperative that we fight for equitable funding as well as access and support for our students. We are here today to call upon all the state, where are the state legislators? They're like, I don't know, but I'm gonna raise my hand. Or their representatives in the room today. Okay, we're here to call upon you. It is urgent. It is a priority. I want to keep you up at night if you're not already up at night, okay? To sustain equitable funding across the Commonwealth, particularly for our urban students. Now, people are saying, oh, you received all that ESSERS money. Okay, yes, we did receive many dollars in ESSERS funding. But think about this. Some of our schools and some of our urban districts are more than 100 years old. And many of them have not had upgrades in many years. So we had to take those resources to make sure, and something that may sound so basic, but to put HVAC systems in schools so that students would have air conditioning. And people are like, really? Yes. So and that was a lot of money that it cost students. Think about your own homes if you want to put central air inside your own home. Think about a school. So as you're aware, many of us received those fundings as a result of the pandemic. And this is how we spent those resources. We implemented HVAC systems. We purchased technology. We used those resources to provide curriculum and tutoring for our students. We addressed mental health needs. Many people, many of our children and their families, I mean, imagine staying home. Many of us, we were at home. And that had an adverse impact on many of our children and their families. Without sustaining funding, districts like ours, like Allentown, like Bethlehem, like Easton, we're forced to reduce staff. We may be forced to delay critical construction projects if we don't have the resources that we need. Like I said, we have those ESSERS funds. I'm going to underscore this. We have those ESSERS funds now, but those funds will be depleted, or we have to expend those funds in no later than September 2024. So we need us to think about tomorrow. We're thinking about today, but we have to think about long range, what we're going to do to ensure that our students have what they need. How can you help? How can you help as an elected official? How can you help as a district leader or a community leader? Help us to commit to overhauling the state funding system for public education. Yes, we are happy that the court ruled that what was happening was inequitable. But we hope that's enacted and it doesn't take another 7 or 8 years of appeals. I'm going to say this, I'm probably not going to be so popular for this, for saying this, but another 8, 9, 10 years before we see the money in the classroom. We need those dollars in the classroom now so that our students and our staff, we often talk about the students, but I admire all the teachers who are in the room and administrators. You are on the front line. You need those resources. We need to pay you better. We need resources to pay our teachers better. Many young people who are coming out of undergraduate schools, they don't want to enter the field of education. And partly it's because the perception is, how am I going to live and be able to afford? So we need your support with that. Reform charter school legislation. Now, I believe that families should have choice and opportunity, but in the way the funding formula is designed in Pennsylvania is that unfortunately it puts in hamper it is having a real significant impact on the public school and its resources, the traditional public schools, because charter schools are public schools. So the traditional public school. We also need increases in special education funding. Our students have many additional needs that we don't have the adequate resources to provide to them. When it comes to charter school reform, again, we want, and when you think about it, and I want to make sure, because I know the president's here, I want to say the right words. I said that many of those funds that we're using, the way it's designed here in Pennsylvania, and it's not this way in many places across the nation. Funding is being diverted from the traditional public schools. And so we need those funding, and if they're going to give additional resources for charters, well, we need additional resources to compensate so that we can support our educational program. It's time for urban students to have the same learning experiences, the same facilities, the same access to curriculum as students across this nation and then across this Commonwealth. Equitable funding is what we're fighting for. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of Allentown and where we are. And in Allentown, we definitely preach one team, and we build on the collective strengths of individuals within our team. So I'm going to call to have join me our interim business manager, Mr. Linderman. Is going to come join me up here. He has over more than 40 years. 40 years of experience in finances. So he is an expert, and he has actually a partner, and we call them our budget brothers, Mr. Richard Fazio. And so they are here helping us through our transition. Mr. Fazio.
You're doing this
Oh.
right.
So who are we as a community? I can't come fight for adequate funding all across the Commonwealth and not talk about my precious jewels in Allentown. This is who we are. We have 16,100 students. If you take a look at the demographic makeup of our students, we have about approximately 2,200 employees. Here's our staff. And if you could take a look here, of course, the teachers make up the majority of our workforce. And we thank our teachers for their hard work and commitment. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our funding formula and how schools are funded in Allentown. Mr. Linderman.
Okay, watch your step there. Thank you, Dr. Birks, and 40 years. Of course, I started when I was 12, so I'm not that old. But and in full disclosure, I actually come from one of the wealthy suburban districts that you all do not get the same funding as we did. I was 40 years in the Great Valley School District, which is in Chester County, a very affluent district. Again, and then my wife came from the Upper Darby School District, so I saw the kind of mix and match there a little bit. And just want to talk really quickly about this. I know you're here to hear other people and not me. If you want to hear a great budget presentation, like May or April 13th, it will be riveting. So this is a chart that just shows over the past 10 years or so that the difference between what the mandated costs have risen for school districts like yours and like Allentown, and what the revenues from the state have gone up. Now, I will say that Allentown was fortunate to get a couple boosts, and they definitely needed it. Again, Dr. Birks spoke about the ESSER money. We got a lot of ESSER money, but you know, if you look to see how much it costs to do an HVAC system in a school, $88 million, which is what we have in ESSER 3, does not go a long way. I mean, it does not go a long way. We have 3 high schools, 4 middle schools, 14 elementary schools, a couple newcomer academies, an alternative school, and the district office, we just leave the windows open, that's the HVAC. So, but anyway, so this is this. And now I'll note and I'll talk about this in a second, there's a little negative number down here below the bar. 10 or more years ago, and again, pardon my age, I did get my Medicare card, but the state used to reimburse us a little bit for charter school funding. So if you spent $1 on charter school tuition, you got 30 cents back. Well, that stopped 10 years ago, nothing. So when I get to another chart later, and believe me, there's only 4 slides, so it'll be quick. One thing, and this was talked about by Dr. Birks and Dr. Royd, there is a real missing item in the state budget. It has been missing for almost 10 years. And that's the state put money in, used to reimburse schools depending on their wealth. So in Allentown, they would get more money. In Bethlehem, they get a little less, but more. Great Valley, we got almost no money in what was called PlanCon. So it was construction reimbursement from the state. So this example here, we are in the midst of right now looking at building a new middle school in Moser Woods. Sounds like it could be a little horror movie or something, Moser Woods. But anyway, Moser Woods Middle School. And that cost would be about $120 million. Now, the plan was to move the kids from a school called Harrison Morton, and I'm just trying to, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only been there a couple months and I only had to remember 7 schools at Great Valley. But so Harrison Morton was a school that was built in 1874 during the Grant administration, and I was told to clarify, that's Ulysses S. Grant administration, not Hugh Grant. So, and in full disclosure, it did have a pretty good renovation in 1923. So we are looking to move those students to this new middle school. They need a fifth middle school in Allentown. They would move them there, renovate Harrison Morton, because it is the only school in, they keep calling it the ward. The ward. So those of you around, renovate that and then move those kids back. The cost of that new middle school is about $120 million. It's like, oh my God. I mean, my house was, not that. But the old way of funding it would have been, if this is $120 million up here, two bar charts, and you can see where I'm going, $120 million, the state would reimburse us about $47 million of it in Allentown, because we have a very high need ratio. And so Allentown would be on the hook for about $73 million of it. Today, because there is no Plan-Con money, I'm going to look right at the one legislator I see here, there's no Plan-Con money, it's $120 million right out of the Allentown taxpayers' pockets. So just in simple terms, every Allentown taxpayer would have to write us an additional check for $3,248. That's more than the average taxpayer's tax bill is right now. So big thing. So please consider Plan-Con. And this affects more, as Dr. Roy and Dr. Birks said, urban schools. Again, in these suburban schools, in the Great Valleys, in the TEs, in the Lower Marions, they're funding them themselves because they have different wherewithal. Charter school cost. This is like scaling Mount Everest here. Allentown's charter school costs have gone up over $50 million over the past 10 years. And it continues to go up even higher. We do understand there is a need for parents and students to have choice, but it is very inequitably funded. It kind of goes right in the face of schools. For every student Allentown puts out there, it's $11,000 for regular ed, and it's $28,000 or $29,000 for a special ed student. So that becomes a very high cost. And for every one student that leaves for a charter school, we pay that amount out of our tax money. Now, for every new student we get in, we don't get $10,000 or $27,000 from the state. We get a lot less. So that's the charter school. This next chart is one of my favorites, and it's my last chart. So about 10 years ago, and there was some funding from the state in this, from charter schools, about 27 cents out of every dollar of your property tax bill went to fund the charter schools. Because the state money that we get is meant for the school programs in Bethlehem, in Allentown. This year, 22-23, our tuition rate and our transportation costs for charter schools, 71 cents out of every dollar going to a charter school, or out of your tax dollar. So if you get a tax bill of $1,000, $710 of that is going for us in Allentown to pay for charter school tuition. Now, you could see that eventually, and it's going to come, there'll be a time when that's going to be over 100% of the property tax burden in Allentown is going to have to be directed right into the tuition account for charter schools. At that point, then, we will be needing to take things away from whatever else we're doing. So that's it. I'm a little passionate, but they're good.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Lenderman. Thank you. So I want you to think about what he said and the direct impact if we don't have the resources that we have. Back to the school, the school Harrison Morton. We want to invite you to visit Harrison Morton one day. Beautiful school. However, we need additional resources. And that's just one school. But many of our schools have not had upgrades in many years. And that's one of the oldest, but we have one of our youngest schools is probably 50 years old. So to put it in context for you. And we haven't had many upgrades to our schools. And so this is my appeal to the elected officials, and we're going to close. I want you to think about the difference that your vote, your advocacy can make on for the benefit of children who attend urban schools throughout this Commonwealth. This is a difference of children going on to be successful or not, having or having not. This is serious. There's a sense of urgency. This is my appeal. I encourage you to advocate, to support, and everyone who's not an elected official, to push and stretch our elected officials to ensure that they pass the necessary legislation to ensure that our students get what they need. Again, I thank you this morning, and Dr. Roy's going to come back. And there's something that's to be said, and I know some of our suburban colleagues who are listening, but we use this phrase in Allentown: we get better together. All of our strengths are needed. So if we support the urban schools, you say, well, I'm in a suburban town. What happens in the urban centers affect the suburban areas as well. And we're one community, one voice, and we should be working together. And I encourage us to work together to support all of our children. And thank you so much, and I am so honored to serve here in the Lehigh Valley. Thank you.
Is that? Just shut the computer down? Yeah. All right, I'd like to welcome our school board member, Dr. Karen Beck-Pooley, to the podium to talk about continuing the conversation on fair funding. Dr. Beck-Pooley.
All right, so where is the fight for full and fair public school funding in 2023? I've got some good news and some bad news. First, the good news. In a historic ruling, the Commonwealth Court made clear that every child in Pennsylvania has the constitutional right to a quality education. Every child in Pennsylvania has the constitutional right to public schools with academic resources, staff, and facilities to meet their needs and set them up for success. And the judge did not mince words. The Commonwealth's current system of funding public education, one that is more heavily dependent on local real estate taxes than almost any other states, one that creates the nation's widest spending gap between wealthy and poor school districts, one that disproportionately harms students of color and economically disadvantaged students, that system is unconstitutional. I've lumped that point under good news, not because it's good, it's horrifying, but because by affirming it, the court's now given us some clear marching orders. It is long past time that we tackled the massive gaps in funding that result from this unconstitutional system, and also the gaping disparities that we can all see, that you've already heard some things about, that stem from those funding gaps. There are things like school-provided Chromebooks for every student in some districts and shared textbooks in others. There are small group instruction and individualized attention in some districts, and staff spread between dozens, if not hundreds of students in others. They are state-of-the-art facilities in some districts, and they're toxic and overcrowded buildings in others. We can see these. So we have work to do. Some of that work will be on legislative fixes, sort of how we fund public schools, changing our public education funding system, but that can't be the only work. As long as we can see the kinds of disparities I've described and others have already described today, we need to take every opportunity to address them, including and especially through this current budget. I should point out that students who are kindergartners when that school funding lawsuit was first filed back in November of 2014 will enter high school next year. And at the rate the governor's proposed budget chips away at low-wealth districts' inadequate funding, this year's kindergartners will be high schoolers by the time we're done, and that's unacceptable. So we saw real progress in the last 2 years. You got to hear some of the impact of that progress. In addition to federal funds, we had increases in basic education funding, and we also had targeted increases through Level Up, that came to districts like Bethlehem and Allentown. In Bethlehem, just like you heard as in Allentown, as we had more, we did more. We expanded our nationally recognized literacy program from our elementary to our middle schools. We expanded social and emotional support at all levels. We invested in targeted tutoring and coaching for students and teachers. And we did all of that without raising local taxes. Our local taxpayers already face a burden because of the way we fund public education in Pennsylvania. So this year's budget must keep that momentum going forward. Basic education funding increases, meaningful increases, targeted equity increases through tools like Level Up, support for construction projects, things like PlanCon and investments in our facilities. Our children can't wait, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beck-Pooley. Now I'd like to invite to the podium President of the Allentown School District, Ms. Audrey Matheson.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We've been hearing an awful lot of facts and figures. I'm going to reemphasize some of them and comment that a couple of weeks ago, I was very happy to hear that Pennsylvania's new governor, Josh Shapiro, has proposed roughly $1 billion in new education funding. That includes raising basic education funding by $567 million, which is nearly an 8% increase. So far, I'm cheering. The governor has also asked for $100 million in new money for special education, also badly needed. And this budget advocates investments of hundreds of millions of dollars in student mental health and school safety, which is desperately needed. We all know that. But for districts like Allentown and Bethlehem, which have been historically underfunded for decades, I have to say, not any of this is enough. This kind of funding only means we can maybe start to catch up to what other wealthier districts have already done. However, the budget proposal doesn't bring any additional Level Up funding, and that has been a godsend to us. And because of past underfunding, and in light of the court decision, we're here today to ask everyone to do what is right. Mandated costs, as others have said today, are draining us of resources needed to give urban students an equitable start in their lives. No student should have the quality of their education determined by where they live. We need Pennsylvania's help so that we can invest in teachers and support staff and in buildings. You've been hearing about Harrison Morton, just that one building, and in buildings that are safe and comfortable and can provide a 21st century education. 92% of Pennsylvania's public school districts have now passed a resolution calling for charter school reform, because we know that that would help us enormously financially. Allentown passed ours in 2020, yet 3 years later, nothing has been done to change the system that takes resources away from our kids. That's unforgivable. Let's not delay implementing the court's decision. The time is now to ensure that Lehigh Valley's urban students have the resources they need. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to invite Mrs. Esther Lee, President of the Bethlehem Chapter of the NAACP, to come on up. Do you want to bring your walker? Going to roll up? All right, we'll put you right here. Gather around, everyone.
Mother cometh.
This is perfect. All right.
Yeah. Usually I try to stand up, but that, as you move forward, it doesn't work. But I tell you, this morning, and I'm thankful to our superintendent for inviting me to this audience. Education has been the key of my entire being since I became an adult. Married here, grew up in Bethlehem, attended schools here, the whole gamut. And what stayed on my mind, because I had children, and I went to school kind of with them, and I understand the system, and moreover, as a school board member, back there in 1971, you all are talking numbers. I'm talking education, specifically. We have more children of color, you call it, African Americans, Puerto Ricans, Latinos, whatever that gambit is in there. But we have more that we need to address than the dollars that are allocated from our state. And I come today to tell you that the state legislative body needs to be educated. You know, we elect them to office, and I have been advocating in the Lehigh Valley in our NACPs that they come together and learn and get motivated to talk to the legislative people in their districts about what they need to know when they advocate money for the various districts. Bethlehem has always been perceived as rich. Look at me. Was I rich? Nobody knows about one another, but we have to be more conscious. Our students in Bethlehem, we've had the special needs. When I was a board member, there were parents, the Latino population was beginning to grow here in Bethlehem during that period. And my position on school board was as such. They're talking about the diversity, education, equity, and inclusion now. I was doing that back in '71 because there was a difference in people. But what I see now, and it's just ongoing, our legislative people don't get it. I don't know if there's any in the room or not, but we need to send them a message that before, as they pass laws, they should follow them through and know what they're doing. And as far as charter schools are concerned, I am against charter schools. I don't support them in any way. There was a woman that wanted to raise money on our behalf, the NACP. I told her to give it to someone else because that's how I feel about charter schools. Our kids of color need that money. And my strongest point today is that legislative bodies, people, need to come forward, be clear on what districts' needs are. Every district isn't the same. Allentown, God knows, I was born here, so I know what goes on in Allentown. Not specifically, but it's never been elevated to any point. Bethlehem, is a close second, but here in Bethlehem, we've tried to follow education needs of children. Special needs areas have always demanded more money because, we've tried to honor the special needs kids. And even those on the other end that are special to the point where they're so elevated that they need extras. And so we're here constantly battling ups and downs in Bethlehem. But I'm pleased that our superintendent and our assistant superintendent have been on top of things. And I've been watching as an African American woman. And, I've come through the district from before 1971 when my children entered the Bethlehem School District till now. And I pray that I'm able to continue. And I've traveled, so I know what goes on in Lancaster, in Reading, in all the areas here about Easton. Easton's a terrible district. I'll call them out. Lancaster's no good. We have situations where people have to live, but we have to come together and let our legislative people know that they've got to redirect the funds to more funds to our areas that are deficient. Pulley, we've got to stay behind it. I know her name because she's a board member here in Bethlehem. But I'm thankful to be here this morning just to express to all of you that don't know me, you might as well get used to me as long as I'm alive, because I consider myself the oldest board member around. But just listen clearly to what I'm saying. Education is key. If a kindergartner does not make it, through kindergarten 1st through 3, learns how to read, what's going to happen? Just envision that. So when we talk to the legislative people, we need the instructors, teachers. So it's going to take a little more to instruct those early learners. I'm not a teacher, but it takes a little more And everybody's not on the same level when they enter school. And I've often said that the decision of the direction children are going to make is done in like first grade, even kindergarten. You know, you get a feel of which way they're going to go. And the helps are on those first grade teachers. So we need more money. I don't know, I've not delved into the budgets to that degree. But that's why I'm pulling out, you know, and Winston's in there. Winston's there, our board member too. You know, but watch, I think we need to watch and ensure that there's more money available to the instructors at that level. And then the special needs people. You know, it's not a 9 to 5 job with special needs. You know, that's like the kindergartners. You know, they're doing something different. So, you know, I see it. I'm not a teacher, but I see it. And I think that we're going to be smart if with the dollars we have, that we begin to redirect, you know, what those needs are. We do it here. I can see we're doing it here in Bethlehem with what we have. But our people in Harrisburg need to get with it. We need to put those guys and gals to work. You know, we had, on Sunday at our banquet, we had McClinton here. You know, she's a young woman and moving forward. And so we need to get the ears of our legislative people. I know who mine are. And they're not, some of them aren't effective. And so when they're not effective, we get together and get rid of them. We've never had a campaign to get rid of people. But I think now's the time. You know, we can no longer wait and let our children be destroyed. The killing and the murders that are going on in our cities, we can stop that. So I'm here today to just reinvigorate these communities to get up off your seats and do nothing. And at my age, if I can speak and I'm willing to stand out and protest, I encourage you to get behind me because I'll be in the front. Yeah.
Now.
Oh, my foot's caught. Big feet, big feet, big feet. Big feet.
I told Mrs. Lee, in the past, I feel like I'm maneuvering my mom around when I used to
Same age, weren't we?
always do that. Yes, ma'am. So thank you, Mrs. Lee. Our final speaker is now a student at Freedom High School, a 9th grade student, so he's got some years left in the system here. Sean Veneman, come on up, Sean.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Sean Veneman, and I'm a freshman at Freedom High School. The education I get at the Bethlehem Area School District is quite possibly the most important aspect to my success as an adult. Graduating with a quality education sets me and my classmates up for whatever our futures may hold. Adults sometimes seem to forget or ignore the fact that the amount of funding my school gets has a tremendous impact on the quality of my generation's education and our future success. 90% of all U.S. students attend public schools. If the state wants to prioritize the success of the next generation, the most impactful way to go about this is to make sure our schools have the money they're owed. The biggest source of missing funding is from Harrisburg. In a ruling from a Commonwealth Court judge in February, some districts are so drastically underfunded that it violates our state constitution. Our legislators in Harrisburg have the power to either set myself and my generation up for success or continue to neglect the future in the name of special interests. I'm pleading that the governor and our local legislators make sure that BASD is fully funded and able to provide an even higher level of education we deserve. On Wednesday, April 26th, Bethlehem students are traveling with the BASD Proud Parents to speak in Harrisburg with our legislators and advocate for a fully funded BASD schools. If you and your parents are interested in joining us, you can email info@basdproudparents.org to find out how you can participate in person or remotely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I know that you had to sit, I should have put you first. You had to sit there nervously the whole time, so I apologize for that. Okay, a couple of closing remarks. We've heard a lot of good information. I guess maybe these are a few asks or a few specific demands. One, the current governor's budget proposal is good but not good enough. And so if we're not going to increase the BEF separately, we need to continue the level up funding that has really been great for urban districts. The level up is aimed at the 100 most underfunded districts in Pennsylvania, historically. So we've had 2 years of level up to try to boost us. 2 years after decades of underfunding. So level up needs to continue at least $300 to $400 million for level up funding. Two, second ask / demand. Let's finally get charter reform done. What is it specifically? Two things. One, charter schools are overpaid for special education students. Charter schools, the tuition that we pay charter schools for a special education student is the average of what the school district spends. But the charter schools don't educate high-need special education kids, right? They don't have, we take everybody, right? That's why I love public schools. We take everybody and we educate everybody. We want everyone to be welcomed and to belong. But the fact of the matter is charter schools don't have high-need special ed kids, but they get the average of what districts pay. So they're getting more than they need. School districts get reimbursed by the state based on 3 categories of need. Makes sense, right? The legislature has refused to pass legislation that would require the same special education reimbursement that the 500 school districts get. They refuse to pass that legislation to apply it to charter schools too. Come on, that's low-hanging fruit. That's like a no-brainer, and we've known it for the better part of a decade at this point. The third ask / demand, cyber charter funding. Again, this is a no-brainer. Cyber charters get paid the same amount of tuition as brick and mortar charters. But they don't have buildings. We've heard a lot about buildings today. They don't have buildings. They don't have facilities. Most every school district in Pennsylvania now either runs its own full-time cyber academy or contracts with an intermediate unit to offer a full-time cyber academy. We know that those programs cost roughly $6,000, let's say $5,000 to $7,000, even $8,000. But we are paying cyber charters in Bethlehem $13,000 or $14,000 and close to $30,000 for special education students. We know it's an overpayment. We know it's an overpayment. And yet we don't fix it. And that money would just simply, that's not even giving us more. That's let us keeping what's ours. And so, and I'll close with this. So those are, I forget how many I had there. Three asks? Okay. I think that was it. And I'll close with this. On the charter school issue, I looked at the slide for Allentown's numbers there. When you put our numbers in, there is well over $100 million a year going from Allentown and Bethlehem to charter schools. $100 million a year. And though I know they're public schools, they're not. They're publicly funded, but they're privately run. They don't have elected boards. They're privately run. So over $100 million of taxpayer money that could be funding the 90% of kids that attend public schools are going into the hands of unelected, privately selected boards that run charter schools. That's a waste of money as well. So let's fix how we fund the charter schools. Let's keep the level up in there at a minimum, and we will continue to make the project. When we have more, we do more. Thank you. I'll look to the members of the media that are here. We've been here a while. If it's easier to just talk to people individually, or if you'd like to ask questions from the group? Preferences? Individually, okay, good. Then we'll have, everyone who spoke will continue to stay right where they are, and you guys can come up or take them to the side, whatever you need. So thank you all for being here today.